Our first team is called HousingDotGov. Come on down. Tell the group just a little bit about yourself while you're setting up. So, like, you guys all met here or something?
Yeah, we met yesterday.
Yeah, this is really cool.
We was left over. So we're at HousingDotGov. My name is Nathaniel Root.
I'm Talani Ayefele.
Peter Nisevi. Mark Sorensen.
Marcel Hernandez.
And this is our project.
Okay, so we decided to go with the problem set 1A, where we're looking at individuals who are differently abled and are in need of affordable, accessible, and integrated housing. We're looking at not only public, but also private and nonprofit organizations who have our own units with accessibility options. And we're looking to see how we can match these applicants with their differently abled unit or living spaces.
So we wanted to go over kind of how we approach the problem. We were really looking at what was out there and who manages those solutions, what their limitations were, and what they do well. And then we try to think of what could be a new or updated solution for that, and what would be included in that. And we did develop a Django example, which we'll go over, I think, at the end. And our overall scope was a kind of a preliminary looking at properties that have loans or restrictive covenants with state or local agencies. These were some of the websites we looked at and some of the things that they had that we thought we could include in our website. The first one had a subsidy search, which was very useful. The second one had just a Section 8 search. The third one had separated wait lists for Section 8 public housing. And then the fourth one was actually kind of the most comprehensive one. It had very many options. That was kind of the best one we saw, where you could choose like which language the landlord speaks, kind of location of transit, shopping, and hospitals nearby within like a block or a mile or more. You could search by area median income, and there were a lot of accessible and other options, such as all electric appliances, units on first floor, low countertops, grab bars, accessible flooring for wheelchairs, and many more. And then the last one was a map that had kind of the community assisted living and county facilities available around the area.
So there's a lot of like good features and tool sets out there already, but there were some limitations that we saw. One of which was that you've got all these different tool sets that are kind of dispersed, and so not all landlords are on one system. And so part of that solution is we want to see a centrally managed system managed. Our thought is for the VHDA to have this managed and included as a requirement in loan docs, because the scope that we're looking at is properties that already have covenants with state and local agencies. And the VHDA already has some requirements in terms of nonprofits working with the web tenant compliant management system. So there's already kind of rules in place for nonprofits being used to working with technology and VHDA. Timeliness. So one of the things is that another thing we're looking at is like how fast are matches updated and whether or not landlords are actually using the system on a routine basis. And so if we can get buy-in from the landlords to understand, like, look, this is going to help you get these ADA units filled. It makes it so that you're fulfilling mission-driven objectives, and then reducing time that participants or applicants are wasting on looking for appropriate units or needing to make requests in the future. And precision, so being a little bit more specific about features that are unit specific. So a lot of the different websites were kind of on the property level. So like, hey, we've got these units in the property that are available, and this property has these accessibility features, but it didn't necessarily link units with those accessibility features. So letting applicants know, like, oh, we've got X number of units with these features that work for me. And so up next is kind of a demonstration of what this website could look like. So if you go up, there's a login button over here that you click on, log in. And this particular applicant has already filled out their initial sign up like requirements. So thing like, what do I need in my building? Like, what do I want? This particular individual is hearing impaired and mobility impaired. And so on the first, so what's happened is once they fill that out, the website has algorithm matching saying like, oh, look, here's Westwood Oaks. This is a really good match. You can't see it on the side, but it's showing 100% match. So I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm gonna go take a look at that. Click on that. It brings up a property sheet notifying you that you've been included on the wait list, which automatically happens once you've signed up and the program's matched you. It'll automatically throw you on the wait list. You can go through the properties after that and then remove yourself from properties that you do not want. So it makes it a little bit easier for you to get in into the wait list, a little bit less stress. But right now it looks like there is no availability in the units. And you also have some property manager information over here, which happens to be a Persian Falcon. So I'm gonna go back and take a look at some other properties. I'm looking at the Finley, but it's a low match. It doesn't have hard of hearing features, so it's the algorithm's doing a soft match, saying like, hey, maybe this isn't a great feature, but maybe you still like it. I don't want it. Take it off my list. Take a look at the Wedgwood. Same thing. So it's available, but we're not available. So right now I'm going to go take a look at my preferences. It's going to say hello. I'm Southern Albatross, and you're able to edit your preferences after the fact. So your disabilities will probably stay the same, but you can change things on like unit size requirements, unit features, so grab bars, and some of the things that were talked about before. If you want to edit, you click down here. So we only have hearing impairment and physical impairment in this example, but it would include intellectual impairments and visual impairments as well. And while I'm on this page, I just got a notification. Looks like Unit 116 just became available. I'm going to click on this and go over here. It's going to give me some direction on what's going to happen. So it's saying I'm first on my wait list for Unit 116, and it is available. If I don't want this unit, I can click the X here, and then it takes me off that wait list. And then lets me know that the property manager should be reaching out to me, or if I want to take my own prerogative, then I can reach out to them as well.
So the policy and implementation. The waitlist is an important feature that we decided to add within that the application because we wanted the ability to have landlords be able to see exactly who's waiting for their units, as well as we wanted our applicants to see what units are available in the spread of location that they are looking for. We'd also like to get a granular push at looking at the data to provide analysis for people with disabilities and what types of options that they're most likely to be looking for, and what type of options they're most likely to choose. Some key participants that we feel would really benefit from this data are the landlords in question, as well as the VHDA. Local jurisdictions such as Fairfax County will be able to take an inquiry on the types of data that this system is generating, as well as working with tech groups, which we would invite to add to our software, such as Social Solutions or the Georgia Housing Search, to more refine our scope.
So in terms of the flow, and the thing I kind of walked through a little bit, but just under the hood how it works is there is really two views, sort of the applicant and the landlord view. The applicant and the landlord both fill out a set of information about, either the property that they have available and the units as well. So the thing I mentioned that kind of the limitation currently is property is almost the same thing as unit on a lot of websites. We want to keep those separate because a wheelchair ramp in an apartment complex will benefit every unit, right? But then each unit might or might not have grab bars. So those are two different things, and we want to keep property and units as sort of separate entities. And all of this feeds into a database that will be very secure. And then within the database, given the information from the landlords, the properties, and the applicants, there's a distance matching algorithm that Masa will talk about, and that's what generates the wait list in ranking order.
So this is a coarse-grained view of the problem that we're trying to solve in distance matching algorithm. And the way we work is that we map each of the tenants to the features that they have on the left-hand side, and then we map the landlords to the features that they can offer for us in their properties. So the way so we're trying to find that this somehow relates each tenant to the proper landlord. And the way we do that, we transfer these features into binary numbers. And after transferring them to the binary numbers, we kind of look into the Euclidean distance between these two metrics that we have, and we come up with a big table which includes the distance between each tenant from each landlord. And when I talk about distance here, it means how the features are matching. It's like if the tenant is looking for some options and the landlord is able to provide those options, they will be closer to each other. So in this example, tenant number 1 is closer to landlord number 1, so they will match, and tenant number 2 is closer to landlord number 2. So this is how they will match. But this is just the sample data. In the next slide, we have statistical information of the data that is provided by Department of Housing from Fairfax County. This information is collected from 13,000 applicants. And we have all of the features that are provided by these applicants. In the next slide, we have the same type of illustration for the data that we have on the landlords and the properties and the features that their properties are having, like having grab bars or like special lightening or whatever that they are able to offer at this moment. So putting all this together and doing our running our algorithm, we have the big matrix here, which is impact 13,000 by 13,000, but you're able to see just a little bit of this matrix because it's very huge and it holds all of the distances of each tenant from each of the landlords. So what we do is we look into them one by one and try to match each tenant to the proper landlord, to the closest landlord. And as a result, in the next slide, I am showing you here how the first 27 tenants are matched to the landlords with their unique identifiers. And because of lack of space, the rest is not available. So this is just a simple illustration of what we're planning to do. And that's it for now. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Really cool. Yeah, I hope you guys got everything in. We really appreciate it. They've been working really, really hard. And if you had any other insights or anything, I appreciate the fact that you showed some of the data that from Fairfax County, and that website looked really cool. And then you had a live match happening right then and there, right? That's pretty cool too. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Oh, well, 5 minutes questions. Yeah, we'll do it now. Do it now. 5 minutes questions.
I have a question for you. First of all, what do you think is the hardest part of this in terms of making it successful?
I can take that one. I think one of the hardest parts is from like a buy-in perspective. So finding the right way to get this solution out there, because you do have a couple of good solutions. I think the thing that makes the most sense is working with a company like Social Solutions or whatever company Georgia Housing Online is using, and getting them to see like these are what we need to make this a really useful product. I think having a large state agency backing this and making this a requirement of nonprofits makes it easier to implement and make sure that there's user uptake as well. Because it's something that nonprofits typically have a very long waiting list, so they don't necessarily need to advertise their units as frequently.
Second question for two of you have to answer this. What motivated you to do the hackathon, this hackathon?
Oh, wow. Just practice for other hackathons. Just keep the momentum going.
Okay.
Maybe I can take it.
Yeah, sure.
So I come from engineering background, but so maybe in the first couple of hours, I was finding it very hard to relate to this type of hackathon where it's not just resistors, capacitors, or just software. But what this hackathon is adding to me is a more tangible problem. So it opens my mind, and I can apply my skills to solve the problems that are out there, and I never thought about them before.
Yeah, and I think all of us come from slightly different backgrounds. I work on data analysis now, but I used to work on homelessness policy. So I've never worked, even though they overlap, there's still a huge silo between affordable housing, accessible housing, and then homelessness, right? What is available for individuals experiencing homelessness. And so to me, that was really interesting to think about it in terms of accessible housing. It's slightly different. And yet I realized on the waiting list that most of the needs really were that people didn't have a current home. So I think there's a much bigger overlap than I think many people realize. That's what motivated me.
Like I've had trouble finding housing before. I actually lived in a firehouse for 2 years as a volunteer firefighter because I needed a place to live. So like this also kind of hits close to home. And I've done work in assisted living facilities too.
So, did you guys talk about kind of the business model to support a platform like this? Like who pays for it?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the route we decided to take was, as our name states, HousingDotGov. But when you take a look at the service in question, it really comes down to the data and the numbers. If you can make the sale that using our system could not only benefit the applicants but really benefit the landlords as well. There are plenty of people, property owners, unit business managers, property management companies that have open spaces and availability, and yet they're not able to reach the 13,000 applicants that are in desperate need of housing. With this approach, when you take it at this level, you're taking a very complex problem and making it extremely simple for both parties to be able to see what's available, and then both parties to be able to match those availabilities.
So you thought a little bit, I saw about reporting. Have you thought a little bit about how you could address the white space in the industry with the data you're collecting? For example, you talked about being able to find what was being most accommodated. Do you think this could help us identify gaps?
I think so. Yeah, you mean in terms of there are individuals with particular needs, but those needs are not being met, right? Yes, absolutely. So this whole wait list idea that we have would identify the gaps because if there are a lot of individuals on the wait list, those are all individuals who are waiting for housing, but there might not be a particular match, at least at that time. And so I think, what our vision is that this is real time, that this algorithm would run pretty much all the time. And that's what would make it accessible to people in the sense of you would be able to get the number of individuals, looking for housing, for example, in Fairfax County with those particular needs. So I think that's the real benefit of this.
So the way we designed this, every time there is a change in the system, everything is going to be updated. So the waiting list is going to be updated. And usually the learning comes in when you have big data and you have your learning algorithm, the precision goes higher and higher compared to the case that it's just human intervention. So the accuracy will be definitely much better.
I think the value in the data that you're collecting is what would make it something that could help fund it as well. I think the developers would be interested in seeing that.
Oh. One more quick question. Do you guys have the opportunity to, it sounds like some of you have been in the space, but to actually go out and talk to property owners, property managers, or for that matter, potential tenants?
You're a real estate specialist over there.
I come from the real estate industry. I'm also in real estate development right now. We didn't go out and talk to anyone, but we kind of thought about what would be kind of some issues that would come about or what they would think about or things that would.
Okay.
Yeah, and I talked really briefly with the company that manages one of the existing websites, the Virginia Housing Search. What they mentioned is their terms and conditions are kind of limited in a sense. When landlords post on that website, it's only limited to the website. And I think, and obviously as one individual, I couldn't get them to kind of change that policy, but I think if, something that comes out of this could be like a push to encourage landlords to share. If you have units available, why not share it right with other platforms? And so this is where, kind of the buy-in would come in. If we say this is kind of a, VHDA encouraged initiative or Fairfax County encouraged initiative, that's hopefully where people would be able to say, oh, sure, if I'm a landlord, I have all these units, I post on this website, I didn't realize, that I should disseminate this information a little bit more broadly.
As far as just I'll piggyback off of what Peter was saying. As far as from the applications perspective, we do, I've personally done work with differently abled people, and I've recognized the difficulties with which they go about finding housing. A close friend of mine, she is I believe a quadriplegic, and she was looking at finding housing that was very close to her university, but because of basically the paperwork and the difficulties and the intricacies of which filling that out was outside of her reach at the time, she has to make a space that's very, very far away from the university which she teaches, and it's a difference between being about 20 minutes away from the location that she needs and being about a 45-minute drive away from the location where she needs to be.
Last question.
One last
Okay, sorry.
30 seconds.
For you to deploy this in the real world, what are the organizations that you need inputs from to be successful in order of your priorities?
I'll take that for you.
Well, definitely the HDA, Fairfax County. I think the emphasis, I think that's the software company that's behind the kind of search site that we used kind of as guidance. What else?
I mean, landlord buy-in as
Yeah.
well. So like understanding like what would make the system useful from the landlord perspective. So I work for a nonprofit housing developer, and one of a block for us is if like technology is not immediately useful for us, then like it's we'll fulfill a requirement, but we're not going to go beyond that. And so if you can make it a useful tool from the landlord's perspective as well, then I think you can make something that's like much snappier.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
guys. Thank you.